Let's be real. If you clicked on this video, you're probably lazy.
Let me watch this video. Oh shit. What are you doing? Nothing. A lazy way to study. Go study 10 hours before I...
Although it is true, you do need to work hard to get good grades, studying doesn't have to take tens of hours or a lot of time, as he might think. Because the truth is, I'm lazy too, but I also wanted the best grades. And normally, these two things would be unmixable. You can't have both, just like oil and water, just like cats and creepers, just like Asian parents and love. I'm joking. But actually, Gary Keller says the key to success is to focus our energies on the important flow and then eliminate the trivial many. So, if you want to get the best grades, but you're kind of also lazy and you want to learn how to study and get the grades in the lazy way, it's possible, and this will be the most valuable video that you watch today. Why lazy works. I recently watched a show called The Culinary Class Wars, and it's been out for a while, and you guys also might have watched the program. The main premise is it's a cooking show, but like most reality cooking shows, there's different stages, and like each challenge type was different until obviously you're left with one final person. And the interesting thing is the chefs that all survived were the ones who are able to do this one thing being able to understand what the challenge was asking them for, and then tweaking their game plan accordingly. Because everyone there is an amazing chef, they all own their own restaurants, etc. But if you were to go the traditional way, the way you would just normally cook, the same way for every single round, for example like the team round, the individual round, the blindfold round, the infinite stamina round, if you did it the same way every single time, you wouldn't make it far. What I mean is, for example, there was a blindfolded round where the two judges were blindfolded. Now, since they're blindfolded, obviously, the aesthetics is less important, and the taste and the flavors and how they work together is the key part. That was like the hexim, the key part. The people who realize this and focus more of their attention on subtle flavors and intricately weaving them did well. Whereas for the infinite cooking stamina part, going for extravagant and punchy flavors would have been a disadvantage, because rather it's like a marathon, so you should have gone for more simple dishes that you know that work and you're comfortable making. However, whereas in the elimination solo round, going for those extravagant punchy big flavors to try and set yourself apart and leave a memorable moment for the judge's head might have been a good strategy. The point is, the reason I'm saying all this is because the show pointed out a key point. The chefs who were the most efficient at adapting won. And for this very reason, there's a debate, because they say the lazy chef actually ended up winning the show. But the truth is, the success achieved through the lazy way is not about avoiding work or responsibility. It's about working smarter, not necessarily harder. It's about finding creative solutions, leveraging our strengths, and maximizing our resources to reach our goals in a less burdensome and more enjoyable way. And chefs cooking and cooking competitions are very similar to exams in getting good grades.
Why did you cut to me? I'm terrible at cooking.
And so we can actually apply the very same mindset. What actually is the exam asking for? What are the key points? That way you can be strategic about where you put your time and be lazy but still get good results. So the first thing that you want to do is the heat map. When revising, don't revise everything. It's very counterintuitive, because your teacher might say, make sure to revise well and make sure there's no gaps in your knowledge. But actually think about for a second, how does an exam actually work? If you have a topic list, will all the topics be tested the exact same amount to make up the 100 marks in your exam? The answer is no. Exam writers are smart. They know some topics are easier than others. They also know that some topics overlap. So they probably want to be able to test the student the most in the most efficient way possible, right? So they're not going to include every single question, because obviously it's a test. They want to test your knowledge. So they might focus on the more difficult questions, the more conceptual ones. Focusing on these bits is focusing on the main key flavors in your dish to help bring them out. There are some topics that came up 100% of the time, and now since you have this little graph, you can see exactly what topic you need to know. And then if you scroll all the way down, there are some topics that you can kind of push to the side and have less importance in, simply because now you know this principle. But for most subjects, you're not going to have that handy sheet. But you can get to know this by yourself by doing past papers. You can find past papers online and then do questions. And not only is it active recall, you can tally up how many different types of topics came up. And also you start to get a feel, when you do enough past papers, what type of questions and topics that the exam tends to ask. And that's exactly how I got these grades in my GCSEs, by following this exact protocol. Imagine how OP it would be if you could like mind read, like as you're like before you're cooking the meal, into like the judge's head and be like, you can listen to like what the judge expects and wants to see. For example, let's say the judge think like, okay, for this dish, like it's quite difficult, but I'd really like to see if anyone can pull off like this specific dish. And then you hear that, so you do that. Imagine how OP that would be. That's exactly what past papers do. And the second thing is review sets. You know those like pentagonal character stats thing? Like I saw them most recently in Blue Lock. But they're everywhere, right? In an exam, we all have this unconscious like kind of character stats pentagon thing for each subject. And so the lazy way to get good grades is to focus on your weak areas and push them out to make this nice plump pentagon. That way, you could skip areas that you're confident in, but focus purely on the areas that you're going to lose marks in. And so what you can do is, as I will be demonstrating, there are going to be review sets towards the back of your textbook. And so you can find review sets for topics at the end of each chapter. Start with these. Unfortunately, like in a movie or anime, we don't actually have this pentagon thing floating around or in our minds, right? So for us to be able to actually get that information, we need to do the review set, because that's like testing everything within that like topic. For example, it could be vectors. And then like the review set does like questions on all different types of vectors. As you're going through them, you can see which ones you get right and which ones you get wrong. And then for the ones you get wrong, you just flick back a couple of pages and do specific targeted practice for just that area. It's like if you want to like focus on like a specific muscle part in your body, you're just going to train that one thing, right? And it's the exact same principle. It's the opposite order what people might do. People tend to start with like the exercise and then move on to the review set. But by switching this around, you eliminate so much time, and people might call this the lazy method, but it's just as good, if not even better. Before I get on to the last thing that you can literally just copy in your next test or exam to get crazy results, a great example of working smart, not hard, is to check out the Student Accelerator program. Here, you're literally surrounded by like-minded ambitious students. You get your question answered by experts, me, and other fellow students. You get access to loads and loads of video courses and workshops and live lectures that are all tailored to help you answer your questions and become the best student that you can be. If this all sounds pretty interesting and you want to find out more, make sure to check out the first link in the description. But anyway, on to that third tip. Model answers. Of course, every chef wants to show off their strengths, their most forte dish, their signature dish, right? But when starting a difficult fish, they're all thinking the exact same thing. And that one thing is, what could go wrong? For example, in the show, there was this like one tofu dish, and like the judges were saying like, damn, he chose a pretty difficult one. Like if he doesn't nail like the cooking like down to the needle, it's going to be really, really bad. And so the chef, you can imagine, also knew that and was thinking about, okay, this is a hard dish, but let me think about what might go wrong and preventative measures in place. So, preparing for the hardest part in your exams and thinking about what might go wrong is the efficient and lazy, if you want to call it that way, to study effectively. For me and every student that I've asked, the 1 to 3 markers are pretty easy, right? But it's more the longer questions, the 4 markers, 6 markers, 10 markers that people tend to lose marks on. And this is kind of like the hardest area in exams. And so the way to get good at these is actually pretty easy, because they're also the easiest type to get good at. When you look at mark schemes, when you do past papers, note down the model answers. This is exactly, if you didn't know, the thing that examiners are looking at and comparing your answer to and seeing how much of a percentage match there is, and that's how marks are given. You can have your own opinions about it, but that's how it works, so it makes sense for you to copy the mark scheme. You can save a lot of time and hassle trying to make your own answers, not knowing if it's correct or not, whereas you could just start with the correct ones if you start with this. For me as well, whenever I did an essay and I got it back, I'd always ask the teacher for an exemplar example, which is kind of like the best or like full marker essays. And this is also a strategy that we use in multiple subjects of mine, and it's really helpful being able to see what the like 100% got, because then you can emulate it and copy it. And people might say this is lazy, but you're just making your exam technique so easy to do and backed up with the knowledge and safety that it is going to give you the marks. You make it formulaic. It's lazy, but you're copying what works. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and remember to check out that Student Accelerator program if this video resonated with you or you want to take your student journey into like hyperdrive gear. Anyway, as always, thank you for watching this far, and I'll see you in the next one. Forehead review. You wouldn't make it far. No. But you.
No, obviously not. No. Obviously not. Yo, I have some nice eyes, bro. Oh la la.